Good morning. Our topic this morning is honoring our differences, and it reminds me to talk about an upcoming workshop that we have for the benefit of our video viewing and our radio listening audiences who won't hear the announcements. And I'd really like everyone to know that Rabbi George Gittleman is coming to the center on August the 7th, and the workshop he is giving is entitled Love Thy Neighbor. It's based on a Jewish Testament commandment. See, the Jewish Testament commands us to love our neighbor, to love the stranger, and to love God. So I sat with Rabbi Gittleman to talk about it, and he said what he's going to explore is, what does the Bible mean by the neighbor and the stranger? Who are these people? And how can love be commanded? Is it still authentic if it's a command? Is it still love? So you can imagine this is going to be a very rich 2 hours at 6:30 p.m. on August the 7th. You can get tickets for it online, Stepping Stones Books and Gifts.org, or you can just call the center for information about it, and everyone is welcome. So that's where we'll learn about the Jewish Testament approach to embracing, honoring our differences. Today we're going to turn to the Christian Testament because there is a very famous piece in it that deals with honoring our differences. It's 1 Corinthians 12. I'm going to read a part of that to you today. And keep in mind, the text comes from a different time in history, and it comes through the filter of the Christian teaching. Nevertheless, a person of any faith can read it for its message about just how important differences are. Differences, it turns out, are necessary. In fact, you might say that they're part of the divine plan. And so they're not negotiable. So I can't say, I don't want them. They disturb me. I can't say I don't like differences. I'm more comfortable in sameness. I can't really say I'm going to reject differences based on this plan of what's better and what's worse. I mean, I can do all of that, but when I do that, it turns out I'm fighting with reality. And it turns out that reality always wins. So here it is in Corinthians. Now, it's slightly changed for a mixed audience. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit gives them all. There are different kinds of services, but the same Spirit inspires them all. There are different kinds of works, but in all of them and in everyone, it's the same God at work. To each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. Now, to one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom. To another, a message of knowledge, but it's all by means of the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing. To another, miraculous powers. To another, prophecy. To another, discernment in spiritual matters. And yet to another, the gift of speaking different kinds of languages, and still to another, the interpretation of those languages. And all of these are the work of the one and same Spirit, distributed by that same Spirit. Similarly, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, "Because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body," it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, "Because I am not an eye, I don't belong to the body," it would not for that reason just stop being part of the body. And if the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body, every one of them, just as they are. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. Now, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. So I'm going to skip to verse 24. God has put the body together so that there should be no division in it, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. For if one part suffers, every part suffers with it. And if one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. So there it is. There's the message for today. It turns out that things are different on purpose. And each difference is a necessary part to the whole, no matter what story I make up about it. You know, I used to study classical music. I played the flute and played the piccolo for a while. Yeah, I played in orchestras too. It was kind of fun, you know. But I got to tell you, piccolos don't always have the most interesting parts to play, you know. Gosh. I remember the very last gig I had at an orchestra in South Africa, and I was playing. It was Richard Strauss's Four Last Songs, and the famous soprano, the Dutch soprano, Emmeling. What was her name? Ellie Emmeling, fantastic. And I could just sit there and watch her because I was playing second piccolo. I think I had 2 notes. Right? But, those 2 notes. You know, they were like the cherry on the top. They were like the icing on the whole cake. I mean, it was the necessary spice that turns an entire dish into something spectacular. You couldn't just eliminate those 2 parts, and it was pointless resenting the piccolo players or trying to eliminate them. We had to be treated as equal members of the orchestra. After all, we took up as much space on the tour bus as the trombone player did, even though he seemed to be playing a much more substantial part. You get the point? You know, there's a classic book. It's an old book that always comes to mind when I talk about this. The author is Og Mandino. And the book is The Greatest Miracle in the World. And in the book, there is a memorandum from God to a person in distress, having difficult times. Think of it as a message from divine mind to the individual in a moment of extreme sadness, on the point of giving up, with instructions for how to return to joy. And it comes to my mind because, to me, it adds to what is written in Corinthians. It reminds me that not only is each part of the body important, not only is each person part of the same life, not only is all life part of the one life, but in addition, everything is a miracle. Just as it is. And just as it is not. To be embraced, not rejected. To be honored, not ridiculed. And that is the first secret, the first instruction in the memorandum from God. It's a reminder for you and I to count our blessings, to reconnect with the majesty of our beings, with everything that is wrong with it and everything that continues to be a problem, with all the things that didn't go your way or my way, to keep in mind that nevertheless, simultaneously, there is a miracle in process, and it's called you. Me, this, that. You know, if I'm unclear about the miracle that is me, how am I going to appreciate it in you? So I have to make a habit of noticing what's good in me, because that's going to influence how much good I see in you. I have to become more skilled at what I concentrate on. All this talk of piccolo is reminding me that when I was studying music in college, there was this time when I was really disappointed. You know, one of the best gigs for a student musician to get was when the regular musician in an orchestra went on vacation. And we could get to sub and play in it. And that was fantastic. And there was this position that I really wanted, and a college friend of mine got the gig. It was a position I expected, and it was given to him by my own teacher. And he called me to tell me all about it. And I was jealous. Oh, not only was I jealous, I was disappointed that I was jealous. I thought I was bigger than that. It was embarrassing. And so I started to make up stories in my head about him that he called me on purpose to be spiteful, to rub it in. It consumed me. I couldn't think of anything else. Have you been there? And so I forgot everything else. I forgot that I had a very loving family. I forgot that I had a roof over my head. I forgot that there was clean air for me to breathe, and I forgot that I could breathe it. I forgot that I could run faster than most people when I was that age. And I forgot that playing musical instruments came easily to me without any effort. And I forgot that I loved art, and I loved poetry, and I loved dance, and I forgot the miracle that was working itself out through me, and because I forgot it, it was ruining my life. Now, I have learned at the Center for Spiritual Living to respond differently to disappointment. And when I'm disappointed, and I still get disappointed, I have learned to turn quickly, to start counting my blessings. I've learned to celebrate what I have, and I've learned that everybody's got something different to celebrate at different times, and it's all valid. So I tell myself when I'm disappointed, if you have the power to think, celebrate it. If you have the power to love, celebrate it. If you have the power to laugh, celebrate it. If you have the power to forgive, celebrate it. If you have the power to imagine, celebrate it. If you have the power to create, celebrate it. If you have the power to speak, celebrate it. If you have the power to pray, celebrate it. And let that bring me back to the miracle of my life, and let it remind me how everyone and everything is different and necessary. The second instruction in the memorandum from God is similar to the first, in that it is an important key to honoring our differences, and it starts by asking us to honor our own uniqueness by declaring our rarity, to pay attention to how rare we are. And here is how it is written in the memorandum. You are not one of a herd heading for destruction in a gray mass of mediocrity. And you are a great rarity. Now, consider a painting by Rembrandt, or a bronze by Degas, or a violin by Stradivarius, or a play by Shakespeare. They have great value for two reasons. One, their creators were masters. Two, they were few in number. Yet there are more than one of each of these. On that reasoning alone, you are the most valuable treasure on the face of the earth, for you know who made you, and there is only one of you. Never in all the 70 billion humans who have walked this planet since the beginning of time has there been anyone exactly like you. Never until the end of time will there be another such as you. you have shown no knowledge or appreciation of your uniqueness. Yet you are the rarest thing in the world. And then the memo goes on to explain how at the moment of our conception, because of the large amount, the variety of chromosomes and genes and the coming together, that many 100,000 billion human beings were possible. Each one different from the other, and yet only one came forth. You. Imagine that. That's something to take in. You are one of a kind. You're the rarest of the rare. You are a priceless treasure with qualities that no one who has ever lived, lives now, or will live shares. And in the book, Divinity asks the distressed person this: why have you valued yourself in pennies when you are worth a king's ransom? Why did you listen to those who demean you? And worse, far worse, why did you believe them? Now, imagine Divinity is telling this to you. Take counsel. Pay attention. No longer hide your rarity in the dark. Bring it forth. Show the world. Strive not to walk as others walk, nor talk as your leaders talk. Imitate no one. Be yourself. Show your rarity to the world, and, we add, while you're at it, notice that the same applies to everyone. Everything. It's not just you and me. It's all beings. That's a very important piece of the puzzle. Your blessings are your blessings, and mine are mine. Your uniqueness is your uniqueness, and mine is mine. All of it necessary, all of it valid, pointless, me trying to be you. The part I have to play is mine. You may not even like it. There are more instructions in this memorandum from God. They're not directly related to honoring our differences. They're more about happiness and success in life. But I do want to briefly mention them to complete the four. Like this third one, it says, go another mile, which to me is another way of saying, don't give up. Be patient with your progress. Be patient with other people's progress. We all forget our blessings and our rarity from time to time. And if you should find you've forgotten, try to remember this. You are not the momentary whim of a careless creator experimenting in the lab of life. You are not a slave of forces that you cannot comprehend. No. Divinity says, you are a free manifestation of no force but mine, of no love but mine. In other words, you were made on purpose. And by the way, the same is true for everything else. The fourth instruction for happiness is all about a power that is in us, a power so great that it is often overlooked, forgotten, and that is the power to choose. Here's what Divinity asks. What have you done with this tremendous force? Look at yourself. Think of the choices you have made in your life and recall now those bitter moments when you would fall to your knees if only you had the opportunity to choose again. But what is past, and now you know the fourth great law of happiness and success. So from now on, use wisely the power of your choice. In other words, we are being invited to remember that in us, perpetually, in us always, is the possibility to choose to love rather than to hate, to choose to laugh rather than to cry, to choose to create rather than to destroy, to choose to get up rather than to give up, to choose to praise rather than to gossip, to choose to heal rather than to harm, to choose to give rather than to steal, to choose to act rather than to avoid, to choose to grow rather than to rot, to choose to pray rather than to curse, to choose to live rather than to stagnate. These then are the 4 laws of happiness: to count our blessings, to declare our rarity, to go another mile, and to use wisely our power of choice. And there is another. One more piece to the puzzle. A rule that is so ancient, and yet it completes all the others. And it is this: to do everything with love. From the Jewish Testament, love your neighbor, love the stranger, love God. From the Christian Testament, and love one another. Now, the final words of the memorandum, I invite you to hear them as if intended for you, maybe even closing your eyes and imagining that it is a voice speaking in your own heart. It says, never demean yourself. Never settle for the crumbs of life. Never hide your talents, not from this day forward. For today you have performed the greatest miracle in the world. You have returned from a living death. You have been born again. So wipe away your tears, reach out, grasp my hand, and stand straight. Let me cut the grave clothes that have bound you, for this day you have been notified you are the greatest miracle in the world.